Hey, seventh graders. Today we are going to start talking about slope. This is going to open up the doors for us to be able to graph things differently, so we don't have to make a table every time we want to graph something. So this is going to be really helpful. So slope describes how steep something is, and when I think of slope, there are different things I think about. I'm sure you guys do too, but I think of things like my stairs in my house, or the slope of my roof, or the slope of a hill. You can think of like a ski slope. And so you can relate slope to things in real life. So these are kind of different notes than you guys have seen before. I like them. They're just they're called doodle notes. So we can fill them in. You guys can color if you like to color. And so slope is the rise over the run. And if you guys ever, if anyone's in construction or anything, the pitch of the a roof is, or stairs are in this. It's like how much does it go up for how much does it go over. And so there's a slope formula, and we'll talk about this. It is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. This sub 2, sub 1, they aren't exponents, and they are not numbers that you're going to multiply. They just tell us which x it is and which y it is. And I'll show how that looks later. Slope represents the rate of change. Slope should be written as a fraction. This fraction should not be as a mixed number, but it should be reduced. This is called simplest form. Oops. Hope you can read that. F-O-R-M. So for example, I might have something like 6/8, but you should write that as 3/4. This would be simplest form. Okay? So in order to find the slope, you can just count. You can find it by counting the units on a coordinate plane or subtracting the coordinates. So you can use it if you don't have a graph. You can use our formula. If you do have a graph, you can just use the graph. So I'm going to start with a graph. The important thing is, and I always work left to right, is that you do the rise first. So you start at this point, and I want to know how many units would I have to go up, and I would go up 3 and over to the right 2. Now going up is a positive value, and going to the right is a positive value. So the slope of that line is 3 over 2. Okay, I'll do the next one here. So the slope of this line, again, I work left to right. I'm going to go up 2, and I'm going to go over, so that's a positive 2, and again I'm going to go to the right 1, 2, 3, 4. So my slope of this line is 2/4, but we know that 2/4 can be reduced to 1/2. So you have to reduce that. Those are both positives. They're going uphill. Now, if things are going in a negative direction, they're going downhill. So you can think of like, oh, things are going downhill fast. That means negative. It means something bad is happening. So here, I'm still going to start on the left. You have to move down before you can move over. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to move to the right 1, 2. So the down movement was negative. And that went over 2. So 6/2 reduces to -3. So this reduces to a -3. So the slope of that line is negative. Okay, so I know there's not a ton of room on here. I want to do a really good job at showing you how to do the slope formula. So I'm going to write it on a little post-it. They use slope, they use an M to represent slope. I forget. I think it's like an old Greek word. Oh, it's a French word. It's like monteur, and it means to climb or to rise. And so that's why they use M for slope. You would think they would use S. So in this situation, we are given this ordered pair. And the first thing that I do is say x1, y1, x2, y2. And the reason why they have numbers is this is the first pair, this is the second pair. So then we're going to go and put them in our equation. Y2 is 4. Y1 was a -2. X2 is 4 also in this case. And x1 is 3. Now, if you are still struggling with, adding, subtracting negative numbers, then use a calculator. 4 minus -2, this ends up being addition, and you get 4 plus 2, which is 6. 4 minus 3 is 1. 6 divided by 1, or 6 over 1, just can reduce to 6. So the slope of that line right there is 6. So once you guys get started on this, it's really not that bad. I'll do the next one. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. I apologize for this, just not having very much room to work here. They're pretty, but not always functional. So if we do this one, I have -1 is my Y2, minus 0, which is my Y1. On the bottom, I have -8 minus 6. That's your x1 is 6. So this -1 minus 0 is just -1. But if you have -8 and you decrease it 6 more, you end up with -14. A negative over a negative changes to a positive. So we get a positive 14. 1/14, sorry. So your slope is 1/14. Okay. So I'll keep this on here so you guys can have an image of it. Couple of things. The slope of a horizontal line, so that means that if it was horizontal like this, is 0. The slope of a vertical line is undefined. And the way that I remember these is that if you are trying to ski on a flat line, you are going nowhere. There's no slope. If you went skiing and you are at the top of the hill and you look down and your slope is vertically so straight, it's so steep that it's undefined. You can't even define it. That's kind of how I remember. And then these are just a couple of little notes. Remember that moving up and right are positive movements, and moving down and to the left are negative movements. And that's on the graph. So it says plot a line that starts at the origin. So starts right here, that's the origin, and has a slope of -3. Label it A. So my slope is -3. So that means I'm going to go down 3. 1, 2, 3, and over 1. Slope is down 3 over 1. And then you're going to use your ruler to draw a nice straight line. So I'm going to show this here. If you went up 3, that's a +3, but you could go to the right one, that would be your negative. So that 3 over 1, or you could go down -3 and right +1. We're supposed to label this one A. Okay, so then it says plot a line that starts at 0, 4, and then you have a slope of -3/4. I want you guys to take a minute to think about where would that start then? How would you start this one? 0, 4 is a point on our graph. So if I went 0, 4, it'd be right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I apologize. Where's my brain today? 1, 2, 3, 4. It'd be right here. Okay, and then my slope is a -3/4. Now sometimes this is confusing because you're like, do I put the negative with the top number or the bottom number? And if I can, I always put it with the top number so I get it out of the way and I don't forget about it. So it's going to go -3, 1, 2, 3, and over 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to draw our line. And this one is B. So just another thing to kind of notice is that the bigger the number, so 3 is bigger than 3/4, so it's steeper. It's a steeper line. Okay, and then this says try it. They want you, steeper slopes have a greater, and they say absolute value. If you can see that little spot right there. Sometimes we get confused when I say bigger because -3 is not bigger than -3/4, but it has a bigger absolute value. So it says graph 4 different lines, all with different negative slopes. So negative, it's going to be going downhill. Show each slope and compare the steepness. So what they want you to do is don't copy me, but graph 4 different lines. Okay? So for example, I could graph one that isn't very steep at all. This one is not very steep. I could graph one that was really steep. And then I could graph some that were in between. And this is just to give you that kind of a visual on lines and their steepnesses. Now these all have different slopes, but they are all negatives. Okay? So it says slopes will be represented with fractions, or slopes will be represented with fractions with a greater absolute value, or steep slopes. And what this means is that if I had a -4, the absolute value of -4 is 4. If I have a -2, the absolute value is 2. Well, which one's steeper, -4 or -2? -4 is steeper. So what they're saying is the bigger the number, the steeper the graph. Okay. The last little part here, it says sketch a sample or few of each type of slope. You could add a little skier on here if you want to, but positive slopes, they always go up from left to right. Negative slopes always go down from left to right. 0 slopes are going to be that flat line, and undefined slopes are always going to be vertical, straight up and down. So then if we were looking at these 3 or 4 fractions, they want you to put them in order from least to greatest. So I know that 1/3 is smaller than 3/4. So the steepest one is going to be my biggest number. So it's not going to be my smallest, my fractions. So is it going to be 3 or 3/2? What does 3/2 equal? 1.5. So who's bigger, 3 or 1.5? Well, 3 is bigger. So we're going to start with 3. Then the next steepest one would be the 3/2. Then the next one would be 3/4. And the last one would be 1/3. If you graph these, this one would be the steepest, this one would be the least steep. Okay, so I know I'm giving you a lot of information here. I think that you'll catch on. this is what you guys are gonna do for your homework. These ones just say tell whether the slope is positive or negative and then find the slope. And then this one, they want you to, they give you a point and they give you the slope and they want you to graph it. And then this one, they just want to know, is this a constant rate of change or is it a variable? Does it stay consistent? What about this one? Okay, so I'm going to jump to this because I want to do a couple with you just to give you guys some more practice. So we're going to find the slope of a couple of these to help you with your homework. So for example, this one, if you can look here, they give you the 2 points. Sometimes they don't. You're looking for a nice point of intersection if they don't give that. So I'm going to go up and then I'm going to go over. See how I draw this nice like triangle here? It has a right angle. I went up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units. And I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4 units. They were both positive movements because up is positive and right is positive. So this has a slope of positive 5/4. It can't be simplified, so that's my answer. Okay, let's do another one. Well, let's do number 3. So on this one, I'm going to go down. I'm always looking for where am I going to make that right angle. So I went down and to the left, or to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's down 5 units. That's a negative. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units positive. So negative 5 over 5. But can I simplify that? I can. This reduces to a negative 1. And that's what you need to have for an answer. Okay? So you guys are going to practice finding the slope. I have a couple IXLs for you, so it's these ones, and then we'll do this next week. Okay, so just do these. If you have questions, ask me questions. Your IXLs are going to be finding slopes like this and using that slope formula. So if you need more help, let me know. We'll talk to you guys next week. Have a great weekend.